Hey, Davita. Hey, Chelsea. Hey, guys. More spooky stories. I just felt like reading again for just a little bit, okay? Hey, Captain Lee. How's it going? Betty. Cross-eyed Betty. Cross-eyed Betty. Where are you? I am too, Chelsea, but I just felt like doing this. It'll help you go back to sleep. If you're wanting to go back to sleep, I don't know where you're at. Maybe you're in the daytime somewhere. Oh, you're up and ready for the day. Okay. Okay, good, good, good. Let me see which one I'm going to read. Don't want no boring one. Nothing boring. Okay, let's see. We're going to go to spooky Florida again, I think. Okay. We got us a whole 4 people, and we're going to love every minute of it. We don't need anybody else in here. Nope, we sure don't. Oh, did you, Captain Lee? It was part 2 of um, Deadly Intentions, I think. An older movie. Okay, this one is called Flight 401, The Everglades. Hi, Haley Ryan. How are you? Let's get comfy. Putting my feet up, my legs up, whatever. Okay, bring this down just a little. Ooh, look at my hand. Looks all big. Hi, remember me? Your name is cute. Oh, I can sleep, but this will get me more in the mood to go to bed. Hi, Mariette. Ready to be frightened. Yeah, I don't like the way that looks on me. I'm gonna go back up. Ah. Let's see. Okay. He'll be here today. He was in at the cottage doing some things, but he'll be home today. Flight 401, the Everglades. Thank you, Haley. We don't talk about Flight 401 much anymore. It was a tragedy, and our company was devastated by the loss of life that resulted from the equipment malfunction on that fateful December night in 1972. The story begins a few months back when one of our flight attendants started having dreams about a plane crash. In her repeated dreams, along with seeing flashes of Christmas trees and holly wreaths, she heard moans and screams and saw passengers fading away into dark waters. Um, She became convinced that one of the company's planes would crash around Christmas, and she predicted that it would take place on a flight going to Miami. Word spread among her friends within the company. Part of my responsibilities at that time included company morale, so I did my best to quash the rumors of an imminent disaster. But I was uneasy all the same time and stayed alert during the holiday season, hoping the woman's predictions would be proved wrong. When Christmas Day passed without incident, I was relieved. Too soon, as it turned out. The day of the crash, a last minute roster change scheduled the psychic dreamer aboard Flight 401 for Miami, but she decided not to work that day and so was not aboard the plane when the equipment malfunctioned. The two pilots, both long-term pros, reported serious problems with the landing gear lights and the nose gear. Instructed by the tower to decrease their altitude and attempt a landing, the pilot brought the plane down to the requested altitude of 2,000 feet and circled for final approach. Unknown to the flight crew, all the plane's instruments had already failed. They were flying blind. Instead of an altitude of 2,000 feet, they were descending closer and closer to the waters of the Everglades. Okay. Hi, Mary. With no way of ascertaining whether the plane was level. As they made the second approach, a wing dipped into the water and the plane broke into several pieces, flinging passengers and crew like broken dolls all over the Everglades. Rescue crews rushed to the area and pulled many of the injured from the dark waters and the wreckage, but in the end, the final death toll stood at 101. It was a devastating loss that demoralized our company. The psychic flight attendant was hit particularly hard as she was close friends with Captain Bob Loft and Don Repo, the pilot and second officer, who were killed. Even her dreams hadn't been enough to save them. Time moves on, of course. The survivors returned to their homes and their jobs. The dead were mourned and buried. The salvage crews pulled the remains of the plane from the Everglades, and the spare parts were recycled for use in other planes. Things gradually got back to normal for our airline. Then, a few months after the accident, a friend who was a vice president with our company phoned me from Florida. I was supposed to get the call since he was there on vacation, but my surprise gave way to shock when I heard what he had to say. He'd been flying first class, one of the perks of being an airline VP, and a pilot had taken the seat beside him. The VP thought he looked familiar, though he couldn't place him right away. He tried to strike up a conversation, but the pilot obviously didn't feel like talking. The pilot was pale and looked sad. The VP studied his face and felt a chill run over his skin as he suddenly recognized the man. It was Captain Bob Loft, who had died the night Flight 401 crashed into the Everglades. The eyes of the two men met briefly, and then the pilot vanished. Hours after it took place, my friend was still shaken by the incident. I couldn't blame him. I felt shaky myself. A ghost had appeared on one of our planes. It was hard to believe. But this was only the beginning. Employees started seeing Captain Loft aboard other planes, and one crew reported receiving a safety lecture from the dead pilot. I hope they listened. Don Repo also began making appearances, sitting next to passengers and then vanishing into thin air. He too had the safety of our airline in mind and warned 2 flight attendants and an engineer that one of our planes would shortly have trouble with fire. He was right. Doesn't sound like a pleasant story to all the people. Right, Mary, remember me. Um, he was right. On the return flight, the engine burst into flames in midair and had to be extinguished. Well, this obviously wouldn't do. We couldn't have ghosts appearing willy nilly on our planes, and I was asked to look into the matter. After investigating each of the alleged incidents, I began seeing a pattern. Many of the incidents took place on L-1011, the same type of plane that went down in the Everglades during Flight 401, but not all of them. It wasn't until I started tracking the spare parts recycled from Flight 401 that I hit pay dirt. Every ghostly appearance took place on a plane that was using one or more spare parts from the L-1011 jumbo jet that had gone down in the Everglades. At least now I knew the reason for the hauntings, and the solution was obvious: remove the spare parts. I authorized the work at once. That did the trick. The ghosts disappeared from our airplanes, and slowly, well, these are scary stories. They're spooky. They're just spooky, remember me. That's all. They're spooky. Um, that did the trick. The ghosts disappeared from our airplanes, and slowly the rumors died away, though the last reported sighting continued to linger in my mind. A flight captain on one of our TriStar jets saw the ghost of Don Repo on his flight. Reportedly, the ghost told him that there would never be another crash on a TriStar jet. The ghost would not let it happen. At the time, I was more pleased than not to hear those words, but things can have more than one meaning, as I realized when our company was forced to close its doors a few years later. No, we didn't have any more crashes on our TriStar jets because we didn't have a company. It was ironic. The last time I was in Miami, I had an airboat captain take me out to the place where Flight 401 went down. As is natural after a tragedy, all sorts of rumors had sprung up about this spot. People reported hearing screams and ghostly moans, seeing white faces beneath the dark waters of the Everglades, things of that ilk. All I saw that fine sunny day were egrets and blue herons. All I heard was the wind. It was a moment of great peace for me. I felt a burden I hadn't known I was shouldering fall from me. No matter what anyone else heard or saw in the future, my time among the phantoms of Flight 401 was complete, and I dared to hope that the phantoms would be at peace too. It was time to move on. The end. Really, Captain Lee? Oh my gosh. It's horrible. Mm, it's terrible. Yeah, Captain Lee. Let's see. Let's see what one I'm going to read next. What do you mean, remember me? It is 4:42 a.m. It's not a prank or a joke. No. Uh-uh. No, I like to read stories. And I read them, whenever I feel like it. Super late, sometimes in the early evening. Why? Hi, Carol Lucy. 5:42 for you, Captain. Why remember me? Why do you think this would be a prank or a joke? It's for real. Do you like hearing spooky stories? Sometimes they're not spooky. Sometimes I read different things. Right now, I'm all into these short, scary stories. I'm glad you came anyway. Maybe you'll find you enjoy it and come back. 11:45 a.m. there, huh, Mariette? 9:42 in Ireland. Nice morning, too. Thank goodness. Good. I'm glad. From Twitter? How in the heck would you find me on Twitter? I'm not even on Twitter. Well, I mean, I am, but I have an account, but I never do anything on it. From Twitter? For real? What did it say? Now, this is freaking me out. Maybe YouTube likes me so much, they're advertising me, and I have no idea. Maybe I'm popular all of a sudden. Maybe I'm the new thing. Maybe they decided, huh? What? What do you mean, not much? What does that mean, not much? I didn't say much? Carol Lucy, really? Thanks, Mariette. Twitter, you're pulling my leg there. I know I'm not on Twitter. Come on. Unless something's happened, like I said, and I'm their new thing, the new go to girl. I'm the new it thing. That could be it. I mean, after all, look at me. I'm hard to keep a secret. I'm a celebrity. Do you like it here, remember me? Do you like it here? Remember me, do you like it? Just answer me yes or no. Just tell me the truth. You won't hurt my feelings. We all have different tastes. Thank you, Carol Lucy. You're not a secret? Okay, so I guess that's a good thing. My secret? I don't know why it's so beautiful. I guess I was just born with it. But see, you get it closer, you can see the wrinkles from all the years of smoking. Okay, remember me. I will. This one's called Diamond Ring out of Pensacola, Florida. See, these are all in Florida. I paused for a moment to fluff my hair a bit before I swept up my long skirts with my hand and stepped out onto the crowded street. Everyone loved to stroll along Romano Street in the evening, and I was no exception. I loved to watch the crowds dressed in their finery, the young men and women flirting, the young ones racing about excitedly. I waved to everyone I saw, the diamond ring on my hand flashing in the light of the street lamps. For some reason, no one waved back, as if they didn't see me. It was a little odd, but I didn't let it bother me. I was out for a night on the town, and I looked my best. That was all that mattered. At that moment, a handsome fellow who was obviously sparking a pretty girl looked up from his flirting and saw me strolling by. His mouth fell open and his face paled a bit. I sometimes have that effect on men. His pretty girl poked him twice before he looked away, swallowing nervously. I tittered behind my lace handkerchief. Their reaction never grew stale. Then the wind changed direction. It blew the smell of salt water. In an instant, it all came back to me, as if it were only yesterday. The scene before me wavered. Suddenly, the lights I saw came from the came from old-fashioned oil lamps, and the people strolling the street were salty-looking sailors, men of business with their long-gowned wives, a few rough-hewn but kind-faced farmers, and of course me and my father, Don Irving Wharton. We were laughing and talking with neighbors when we heard screams from the harbor. Everyone looked at one another in alarm, and my father thrust me behind him, reaching for his pistol. The screams grew louder, and suddenly a bunch of men burst onto the street, running for their lives. They were followed by a band of rowdy pirates, shouting curses, firing guns, and waving cutlasses. Pirates, my father shouted. Run, Sarah, run. Men were already firing back at the invaders. Women screamed and ran into one another in their attempt to flee. Father fired, and one pirate went down. I stood behind him, frozen with fear. Run, Sarah, he screamed again as he desperately began to reload his pistol. At that moment, an evil looking man with a long scar that bisected his face diagonally leapt upon my father from the shadows, knocking him over. I shouted in outrage and flung myself forward, beating at the man's back and sides with my tiny fist. He knocked me aside with one well muscled arm, concentrating on my father, who was trying to rise. I fell backward and from my sprawled position saw the pirate raise his cutlass and thrust it through my father's heart. Yeah, yeah. I screamed again, fear and rage welling equally within me. Around me, pirates were overwhelming the townsfolk, and more than one woman was being ravished right on the street. Swearing that I would go down fighting, I leapt upon the pirate who had killed my father, knocking him off balance. I pounded both my fists on the back of his head, and he staggered under the assault. Behind us, I heard a man laugh. I was pulled off the murdering pirate by a huge, scruffy man who was better dressed than the others. I expected it was the pirate captain. One look at his face told me what was in store for me. I like a gal with spirit, he said. flashing me a grin so that I could see his gold tooth. I flailed widely at the pirate captain, aiming for his eyes like my father had taught me. My self-defense training paid off. When my hand struck his eye, the diamond in my ring acted like a knife, smashing deep into the eye socket. To my complete astonishment, his eye popped out and rolled down his beard and onto the nasty ground. He gave a roar of pain and dropped me. I struck out at him again as I fell, and the diamond tore a piece out of his other eye. He staggered around, blood pouring down his face. I scrambled back on all fours, trying to get to my feet, belatedly realizing that I should flee as my father had commanded. At that moment, the pirate captain straightened up, glaring at me through his one remaining eye, drew his cutlass so fast that I barely registered the movement. I backed up quick until my back hit the wall of a building. The pirate made one dramatic horizontal cut with the cutlass, decapitating me. For an instant, my body remained upright. Then it fell to the ground, leaving my spirit hovering above it, too stunned to do more than stare at my head as it rolled away. Wait, let's see. Um, the diamond ring still sparkled on my hand in the lamplight. The pirate staggered away, so bothered by his wounds that he forgot to rob me of my diamond. But the pirates, but the pirates around him were so distracted, and all the jewelry was stripped from my headless corpse, while my spirit hovered, helpless to stop them. I watched in shock while the pirates looted and burned the local. Oh, is this? That wouldn't be Casbat. There ain't no way, Carol Lucy. Does she like golf? So she is a troll, this person. You're right, Carol. I like golf, but will admit the older I get, drama, cheap auctions are getting my interest. Come on now. Are you going to be nice or what? If you're not, you can go bye bye. If you really want to know something, remember me, then let me know who you are. Give me a hint. Just come out and say it. Don't go trolling around. Sweet potato and fish tacos. Well, just be nice and listen, okay? Don't be being mean to anybody. Leave Carol alone. Thank you. I watched in shock. Okay, Carol Lucy, two scooter chick, gmail.com. Just like my name on here at gmail.com. Remember me. Let me write it in here, Carol, just so you know. I will, Mariette. I will. I'll carry on, Mariette. Sorry. I don't know if that worked. Okay. There we go. Um, the townsmen fought back and eventually drove the pirates off, but not before many lives were lost and much property was damaged or burned. All this time, my spirit floated in a daze above my dead body. Finally, neighbors claimed my body and that of my father. Not knowing what else to do, I followed them home. I watched as they helped my poor mother bury us. All the while, I waited for the light to come, for an angel to take me to heaven, but nothing happened. Once my body was under the ground, I started feeling very sleepy, so I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I was dressed in my blue frock with my hair done up all pretty and the diamond ring on my hand, standing on Romano Street. It was a beautiful night for a stroll, so I began walking along the street, calling greetings to the people I saw, though no one greeted me back, which I thought was strange. I couldn't understand why people didn't seem to see me. Oh, wait. I already read that part, didn't I? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. That's where it started. Then the wind changed direction. It blew the smell of salt water into my face. In an instant, it all came back to me as if the scene before me wavered. Suddenly, the lights I saw from old fashioned oil lamps and the people strolling the street were salty looking sailors, men of business with their long gowned wives, a few rough hewn but kind faced farmers, and of course, me and my father, Don Irving Wharton. That was the end of that. Let's see. Um, Find something else in here. Maybe we can find something besides ghost. Let's see, 5 a.m. I'm going to just read one more, okay? Oh, I'm getting tired. Aw, Mariette Ells, you're so sweet. Thank you. Aw, number one. That's adorable. Thank you. Okay, Carol. Sorry about that, Carol Lucy. Just going to read one last story and then into bed. I'm going to try not to sleep super long during the day because it's supposed to be 70 tomorrow here. And that's going to be nice. I want to open up the windows and get some fresh air in here, do some cleaning. Thank you. You didn't have to do it, but I appreciate the thought. I got to take a drink first. This one is called Little Lucy from Putnam County, Florida. A tall, proud figure was the medicine man. They said he was descended from an African princess who married a Native American warrior priest, and he looked the part. There was a regal air about him, with his dark hair and flashing eyes that could pierce like the gaze of an eagle. His thin face seemed cold and proud until he smiled. People who earned a smile from the medicine man would follow him to the edges of the earth ever afterward, so they said. It was that kind of smile. Okay, Lucy. The medicine man wore the ordinary trousers, shirt, and coat that any man living in a Florida settlement might have worn, but added to these were two items that were not typical. One was a sheathed knife that he wore strapped around his calf. It had a green jewel in the hilt, and when the medicine man was working, the jewel was said to glow with an unearthly light. The second item hung from a thong around his neck. It was a small pouch that was said to contain the dust of the warrior priest from whom he descended. The dust was so powerful that he needed only a pinch of it to work wonders, or so they said in the local settlements. Normally, the young couple working a small farm in the outer reaches of the remote settlement would never have dreamed of approaching such an awesome figure as the medicine man. But terrible fear moved them as nothing else would, for their only daughter, the light of their eyes, lay dying on her bed, wasting away day after day, and no one knew why. She was a scamp of a little girl with golden blonde curls and big green eyes, who had never been sick a day in her life. She raced around the farm with her little dog Lucy, climbing trees, building forts, petting the farm animals, making friends with the wild birds, and singing her little heart out, mostly songs she made up about her dog. Lucy Lou, my friend Lou, Lucy Lou's a darling, she caroled over and over until both her parents were singing it too. And little Lucy was a darling. She weighed all of 10 pounds, just a wee mite of a dog with black curls all over her minute body. But she made up for her tiny size with a fierce spirit and protective ways. She wasn't afraid of anything and would do whatever it took to protect her family, especially her beloved mistress. Little Lucy would bark at gators if they got too close to the house, scold the workhorses when they got too lazy, growl when she saw snakes, and chase away much larger dogs if they set foot on her property. And nobody who seemed threatening got anywhere near her golden haired little mistress. She was the perfect watchdog. But even Lucy couldn't save her friend from the mysterious malady that overtook her. One day, the little girl came into the house, complaining that she was tired. She lay down on her little bed and couldn't get up again. Her poor little body became rigid, as if she were made of wood, and her arms curled inward until they lay shriveled and useless across her tiny chest, which barely moved, so tiny were her breaths. Little Lucy lay on the bed beside her young mistress, keeping watch and occasionally licking her cheek, but she could do nothing to help her little friend. Here's an illustration of the little girl and little Lucy. The parents were terrified when they saw this transformation of their previously healthy little daughter. The father went all the way to the next settlement to fetch the doctor, but old Doc could find nothing wrong with her. He stayed at their farm for several days, doing everything he could to cure her using traditional medicine, but the little girl just faded more and more into her own head, her skin growing paler and translucent, her body more rigid, her eyes vacant. Finally, the doctor told the grieving parents to prepare themselves for the worst. He left them several bottles of medicine, and the husband drove him back to the settlement, for the doctor had other patients to tend whom he had neglected for too long. The mother sat stroking beside her daughter's bed, stroking her shriveled arm as she waited for her husband to return home with the wagon. There must be something they can do, she thought desperately. They couldn't just let their little girl die without a fight. The tired mother cudgeled her brain, trying to find some hope for her daughter. By the time she heard the jingle of the harness and the thud of hooves in the farmyard, signaling the arrival of her husband, she had remembered the stories she'd heard about the medicine man. Excited, she hurried out to the farmyard to speak to her husband. Little Lucy, hi, Josie. I love your name, Josie. Um, Little Lucy caught her excitement and followed her outside for the first time in days, barking with something of her old spirit. It'll be hard to find him, the young father said. He roams to all the settlements in turn, and I'm not sure which tribe he lives with when he's not roaming. But the young father was determined to try. It gave him something to do, and action was better than sitting at home waiting for his daughter to die. So he saddled up a fresh horse, and rode to all the nearby settlements to leave messages for the medicine man. It took him 3 days to return, and his daughter had faded away to practically nothing in his absence. Her mother couldn't get any food down her throat and only a few sips of water. It looked like the end. And then little Lucy lifted her head from her mistress's pillow and whined, looking toward the window. Suddenly she sprang up and raced out of the room, barking a welcome. She danced in front of the door until the father let her out, and then she raced into the yard to dance around the tall, mysterious figure of the medicine man. The medicine man smiled at the little dog, a smile that made you want to follow him to the ends of the earth, and he picked her up and scratched her faithful little head as he stepped into the house. Tremulously, the young parents took the medicine man to see their daughter. He placed little Lucy on the bed beside her young mistress, and then spent several minutes examining the little girl from every angle. Finally, he took the parents to the kitchen and instructed them to go outside and pick wildflowers, keeping positive thoughts of healing in their minds while they worked. The parents agreed at once and looked at each other in hope for the first time since their daughter had fallen ill. As they left the property in search of wildflowers, the medicine man began his rituals. He opened the windows and doors to let in the fresh air. Then he went outside the house, pulling sacred objects out of his conjure bag and ritually marking the front door before he began the sacred ritual for summoning healing forces that were known only to a few of his people. As he worked, the clouds overhead began to boil and swirl. Then a fierce wind swept through the farmyard, trying to flatten everything in its path. But the medicine man continued chanting until the wind died away and a single ray of light beamed down through the shadows. The ray of light was followed by others as the clouds parted and blue sky shone through. When the farmyard was ablaze with sunlight, the medicine man released the first part of his healing ritual. The second part would begin when the child's parents returned. A few minutes passed in peace and calm. A gentle warm breeze filled the clearing, and the air outside the farmhouse, buzzed with light and hope for the first time in weeks. When the parents returned with their offering of wildflowers, the medicine man had them stand outside the open windows and sing a sacred song while he continued the healing rituals inside the house. Taking the armful of flowers from the mother, he walked inside the house. Instantly, the small house began to shake, as if it were caught up in a massive earthquake. As he strewed handfuls of flour on the kitchen table and floor, the shaking grew worse. Pots and pans rattled, and cutlery jumped in its drawers as he stepped into the child's bedroom. As he strewed flowers around her bed, the shaking grew so bad that the small mirror on the wall shattered, and little Lucy sat up in alarm, her dark eyes watching him keenly. The little dog trembled from head to toe, frightened by the shaking, but she refused to leave her mistress's side. Oh, that's so sweet. Hi, Encheever. Really, Encheever, I'm really honored that you would do that. Thank you. Really appreciate that. The medicine man gave her a pat on the head as he strewed the last of the flowers around the child on the bed. Boy, animals are like that, aren't they? Or dogs are, they might be so scared, but if they're loyal, they will stick by you shaking and trembling. Then he began a ritual chant of healing, calling for the powers to rescue this child from the darkness that threatened her life. Suddenly, the little girl stiffened and sat bolt upright, her eyes staring blankly into nothing. Her mouth opened and a black mist boiled out, filling the room with a foul stench. Two red lights appeared at the back of the child's throat, and the evil head of a black serpent appeared, tapping its way forward along her tongue. This sounds like Alien or something. Thank you. Thank you. Slowly, the medicine man tempted the serpent forth, offering its mushroom caps be spelled to make them irresistible to a spirit creature such as the one that dwelled in this child. The serpent slowly slid out of the child's mouth as she made miserable retching sounds in her throat. It was nearly as long as the child's body, and the medicine man was amazed that the child was still alive, with such a dark being in possession of her. She must be a very strong and honorable child indeed to fight so long against such a spirit. Suddenly, the serpent was loose on the bed. This was the moment of danger. The medicine man reached for a special knife with the jewel in the hilt, but his fingers had not quite reached it before the serpent sprang forward and coiled its body around him, squeezing tight. The medicine man cried out, the knife dropping to the floor. The evil spirit squeezed tighter, cutting off his breath. Then the evil serpent thrust its head into his mouth, intent on possessing him as it had possessed the child. On the bed, little Lucy started yapping fiercely. Oh, this little dog better not get killed. Dancing around the covers and over the little girl's legs as she nipped again and again at the snake's black body. The medicine man made frantic sounds in his throat and thrust out his chest so that the medicine bag, full of the dust of the warrior priest, swung out from under his shirt. Little Lucy made a great leap and tore the bag off its thong. The mouth of the bag gaped open, and the dust spilled out over the bed, over the little girl, over the choking medicine man, and over the evil serpent spirit. The skin of the evil spirit began to sizzle. It withdrew its red-eyed head from the medicine man and screamed, an inhumane wail that cut through the soul like razor blades. Wherever the dust landed, the serpent's skin boiled and turned into a black mist. Within seconds, the serpent shape had vanished, and a small dark cloud roiled above the bed. With a gasp of command, the medicine man scooped up the last of the dust and threw it into the cloud, which vanished with a bang. The young parents came bursting fearfully into the house, having heard the serpent's terrible scream. A wave of fresh air, perfumed by flowers and filled with the hope conjured by the first part of the ritual, filled the child's bedroom. The medicine man was already getting to his feet, and on the bed, little Lucy was ecstatically licking the face of her young mistress. The child's eyes were closed, but her parents could hear her singing very softly. Lucy Lou, my friend Lou, Lucy Lou's a darling. I'm sure didn't sound like that, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, cool, Carol. That's awesome. I'll be reading it as soon as I get off of here before I go to bed. Hi, Leslie. So nice to see you. Just at the end of the story. I'm gonna go night night. Then she opened her green eyes and looked up at her weeping parents. Her mother gathered up the child and hugged her tightly, and the father, forgetting himself in his joy, pounded the medicine man on the back, just as he would have done to one of his buddies at the tavern. The medicine man gave him one of his rare smiles, but the father backed away hastily, remembering that the man was descended from an African princess and a warrior priest. But such was the power of the medicine man's smile that the father relaxed and smiled back before hurrying forward to pull mother and child into his arms. The medicine man silently withdrew from the house, pausing only to collect the sacred items he'd used in the healing ritual. When he reached the yard, he heard a short bark behind him. Turning, he saw little Lucy running down the steps toward him. She carried his leather pouch in her mouth. Smiling, he knelt down and rubbed the little dog behind the ears before taking the pouch from her. There was still a little dust in the very bottom of the pouch, so he pulled the straps tightly and reached up to secure it to the thong around his neck. Then he paused as a thought struck him. He looked into the eyes of the faithful little dog, who would continue to guard her susceptible little mistress when he was gone. She might need some help keeping evil spirits away from her mistress in the future, and he might not always be around to help. He lowered his arms and beckoned to the dog. She jumped at once into his lap, and he laughed as he fended off her joyful licks. Then he tied the bag around the collar of little Lucy as she wagged her stubby tail and wriggled in delight. When he was finished, she licked his cheek, giving him a meaty woof of thanks into his ear. Lucy Lou, my friend Lou, Lucy Lou's a darling, the medicine man said softly, stroking her tiny head as she joyfully rolled her eyes. Then he shooed the dog back into the house to tend her mistress and left the sunny farmyard to the laughing, shouting, weeping voices of its rejoicing family and to the excited yapping of a very special little dog. Oh. Hey, Alicia. Is the movie over, Alicia? My boo? I'm just getting ready to go to bed. Oh, love you too, and Cheever. Thank you so much. You had a dog years ago, saved your son's life. He took off on his toy tractor, coming off the path onto the road in front of him. Oh, wow, really? So he stopped the tractor? Oh. Yeah, I know, Alicia. We going now. Carol Lucy. That's a great one. Night, night, guys. Love you. Thanks for coming. That's great, Carol Lucy. Thank y'all. See you soon. Have a great day and night. You're welcome, Captain Lee. Thank you for listening. Thank you, guys. I like reading to you guys. Night, Martha. Martha. Good night, Denise Renee. Good night, Alicia and Carol. Leslie. Bye, guys. See ya.